Just want to thank everybody here. I want to thank my family. I want to thank... We don't have much of a race anymore. Based on what I'm seeing on television, Senator Cruz is just about mathematically eliminated.
That's Donald Trump in his victory speech last night. Stephen Roberts, ABC News political analyst. Mr. Roberts, did we see Donald Trump sound almost presidential, dare I say, by calling Senator Cruz last night?
You did see a change, and I think a very clear one. That's a result of the fact that he now has hired some real professional coaches and advisors. And, during the week, Wall Street Journal came out with a poll which showed Trump's negatives at 65%. That is historic. That is far higher than any other negative rating any major presidential candidate has had in the history of polling. By the way, Hillary Clinton was no winner either. She was at 56% negatives. But you look at those Trump numbers and you put your finger on them, McGraw. A key reason for that huge, his favorite word, for that huge unfavorables is that he was not presidential, that people didn't think he had the character, the temperament, the judgment to be president. He might be an appealing novelty, a TV star, or he might be amusing to watch on TV, but that's a very different measurement than being a president. So going forward, one of the real questions is, which Donald Trump are we going to see?
Okay, the other question, I think, is how firm are these people in their responses? I don't see, if you hate Hillary today, I don't see that changing. But if you dislike Trump today, I could see more people being open to changing that position going forward.
Well, it's a fair point. Hillary Clinton's been around a long time, and people have very well established views of her. Trump is a much more fluid character. But also remember, he's been on TV a long time, too. It's not as if he just arrived on the national scene a few months ago. But I think you make a good point. I think that views of Clinton are probably more set in stone than of Trump. And as I mentioned, those negatives for Hillary Clinton are very sizable. And one of the things that's really alarming a lot of Democrats is the consistent attacks from Bernie Sanders on Hillary Clinton's credibility and honesty. He even said at one point she might not be qualified to be president. And another key question going forward is which Bernie Sanders stays in this race, because Clinton last night tried to offer an olive branch saying there's more that unites us than divides us. I think a lot of Democrats are going to go to Bernie Sanders sooner rather than later and say, look, pal, you want to stay in this race, you've earned the right to do that, you want to use this as a platform for your progressive ideas, fine. But stop attacking the one person who stands between us and President Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But the question is whether he takes that advice or not.
All right, so Ted Cruz, is he still the last line of defense? Because he is really wounded after last night.
He's very wounded. He performed miserably in New York, came in a bad third. And you and I talked about the fact that this was not good territory for Ted Cruz. This is a very, very conservative candidate who does well in Texas, does well in the South, maybe in the Middle West, but New York, and is, of course, also a guy who attacked New York values, which was a desperately unhappy thing to have said when you're running in New York. I think he's going to continue to do relatively poorly in some of these other mid-Atlantic states. You got to remember, the electorate is very different. You look at who voted in New York yesterday. Far fewer evangelical Christians than in some of these other states, and far fewer people who describe themselves as very conservative. Those are Cruz people, and he doesn't really travel very well. So one of the key questions Republicans have to face is, if we stop Donald Trump, are we better off with Ted Cruz, who, in the view of some Republicans, would be an even more disastrous candidate than Donald Trump? Now, of course, there's John Kasich out there saying, right. You reject Trump on the first ballot, you reject Cruz on the second ballot, and there's me, Plan K. But that's kind of a fantasy, too.
Donald Trump did sound a little Ross Perot-esque last night, talking about bring these jobs back and it's time to get to work, right? He sounded a little Ross Perot last night.
Well, he's been saying that a lot. I mean, I thought that tone was not new. He has focused very heavily on this question of jobs. Now, you can argue, as a lot of economists had, that he has an extremely oversimplified view of what drove the jobs away from America and what's needed to bring them back. The fact is, most economists say that most of those manufacturing jobs, particularly in low-end industries, are not coming back, no matter what you do. When he says we're not going to let people leave, I mean, he is oversimplifying the whole question of the job picture in America. But there's no doubt that one of the things that's fueled Trump is this feeling about less educated people, and again, it was true in New York. Less education people had, the more likely they were for Trump. These are the folks who cannot take advantage of the new jobs who are being created in the economy because they don't have the education, and that's a very sore subject for a lot of people, and it's a very strong element in Trump's appeal.
Steve Roberts, ABC News political analyst, best in the business. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay, pal.
6:57.